The Detroit Red Wings are now linked to a star centerman in the league after an insider has just dropped a bombshell trade report revolving around the Red Wings and Steve Yzerman's plan for this year's trade deadline to bolster this Red Wings team and catapult them into contender status. We're going to break down all of that and more, including how the Red Wings can actually make the playoffs, because things have been a little crazy since coming back from the Olympic break. We're going to break that all down and more in this episode of Red Wings Digest. But before we get into all of that, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. We've noticed that about 98% of you who watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel. So if you want to stay up to date with everything that's happening with the Red Wings, because this week is going to be crazy, go down below, hit that free subscribe button. If you're over on Facebook, hit that follow button. But Mark, let's get right into it. A lot to get to today, including some interesting prospect news, which we'll start with, and we're going to get into Robert Thomas in just a second, because things just got very real, Robert Thomas and the link to the Detroit Red Wings. But today is the first day, and this is from Let's Go Red Wings Prospects. Great follow on Twitter, by the way. Just want to shout them out. But first day prospects can sign their ELCs for the upcoming seasons, 2026, 2027. And obviously college players can't sign until their seasons conclude, which is soon anyway. But Mark, what do you make of this? Because there's a couple interesting prospects out there right now that could sign as soon as today. That news could come down. We could be covering it this week as well. But it is something to keep an eye on with this Red Wings team as we head into the last half of the season here.
I mean, Eddie's going to be a very interesting prospect. A second-round pick coming through with Detroit. He's played in the Swedish Hockey League, 21 points in 38 games. This is against grown men. A lot of people look at the Swedish Hockey League and say, oh, this is a league. Maybe there's a lot of young guys running around, but this is a league that has, of course, guys in their mid-20s, 30s, pushing through. So almost half a point a game, or just over half a point a game, does look outstanding for the young second-round pick. And what's even more exciting about a guy like this is going through with this physical two-way force, strong forechecking, finishing, everything he does. It makes it seem like the perfect complementary piece to play with a guy like Robert Thomas, maybe if they do pick him up, or of course Dylan Larkin. Other pieces like this, getting checking forwards, especially in that second round, is always nice. And Darius, listen, there's a chance maybe he doesn't sign the LC coming in to next season. Maybe they kind of prolong that, but there's going to be a lot of interesting choices between the pipes. We know there's a big name NCAA guy the Wings need to sign. Casa making the jump. It's going to get interesting, especially pushing farther into the season and maybe even into next season, with some of these guys having a legitimate chance to make an impact within this organization.
Definitely, and the prospect situation in the Red Wings organization is very good. They have a lot of draft capital. And speaking of which, let's get to Robert Thomas now, because it seems as if the Red Wings are poised and ready to make a blockbuster trade come this trade deadline. We know that they were in on Tyler Myers, and he has since not accepted a trade yet to the Detroit Red Wings. And it might not actually happen, of course, but obviously Elliotte Friedman drops a brand new report on, Robert Thomas, and that he is likely, and it was just on your screen there, it is likely that he's actually traded, and he does think it could actually happen before this Friday's trade deadline. Now, how does that include the Red Wings? Well, we've heard some rumblings for the last couple of weeks about the Red Wings and Robert Thomas, and then now this from Nick Kypreos as well. It seems to be linked to Detroit, and if a team has the assets to satisfy Doug Armstrong, my best guess is that the Red Wings are it. And it's true, right? We've talked about it for a long time at this point. You're talking about Marco Kasper, probably first round pick, stuff like that, and you can see from Friedman here, there's a decent chance that he is moved by Friday's deadline. Now, when talking about Robert Thomas, Mark, there's a lot to like with this player. A lot of people are going to be like, why would you give up so much for this player? He can be a first line center. If he comes in and he's the second line center behind Dylan Larkin, this team is very scary all of a sudden. Like, you are a contender for sure. Now, you're giving up a lot of pieces in a trade, that's for sure. But look at the way that it bolsters this lineup. And not only that, he has a sweetheart cap situation. And what do you make of that, Mark? Because there's some interesting implications with the cap going up the next couple of years, how much cap space the Red Wings do have. They can absolutely make this work.
And I think the big thing with Robert Thomas, we're seeing the Quinn Hughes type deal going around. And looking at that, there's a big thing where Robert Thomas is at 8.1 for the next 5 seasons. So this is a guy where the cap roll's rising. This is going to be a smaller cap hit. And when looking at the stats, everything is in the green. What this guy does offensively, he steps in as a legitimate number 1 center, of course, to be a number 2C behind Dylan Larkin. But when looking at the Eastern Conference, there's not many teams that can go toe for toe with a top 2 centerman like this with Dylan Larkin and Robert Thomas coming through. Of course, he does have the no movement clause, but there's a lot of talk that he is willing to waive this. If his name's out there, if we see Friedman speaking on this as well, the man himself said he was surprised that it's even got to this point. This is going to be the premier player to add for any team in the NHL looking to go on not only a run this season, but with the fact that he's still young and can join this team and legitimately bolster this team for the next 5 seasons. But the big thing is, Darius, it's going to cost a lot. We're looking at a team that, of course, has a lot of prospects. You have a lot of guys in the farm system, overseas, in the NCAA. You have a lot of these guys. Plus, you have multiple picks in each round, or at least a pick, I should say, in every single round with the multiple sevenths, but that's not going to be the pushing points. This is a team that would have to seriously look at this deal, and I think it's worth it at this point to say, hey, Robert Thomas on that second line, not only does it help with your 5-on-5 production where you can spread out the lineup a little bit, but the big thing with that as well, I think you go out to make this move. Yes, it might suck to move assets, but you get this premier piece for 5 more seasons after this year at a darling contract.
That's the thing for me. If you're trading for a guy like this, yes, you're going to give up a lot, right? We know the return is going to be a lot. So you're talking about some of the younger prospects on this team, maybe not even on the team, excuse me, like probably some guys from Grand Rapids as well. Some of the younger players, you know, you're probably looking at a Carter Bear at this point, which would be tough, right? You're looking at that, definitely that first round pick this year. But at the same time, this is not a UFA move. It's not like, oh, we're bolstering our second line center position and, you know, we'll feel good about ourselves, hopefully making the playoffs. I want to get to that in a second as well, their playoff chances this year. But, you know, you're not just bolstering the second 2C position for just this year. No, it's for the foreseeable future at a darling cap hit, just 8.1 and some change $1 million for the next 5 seasons, right? So it just makes a lot of sense if you're the Red Wings to bolster those 2 positions moving forward. So it's gonna be very interesting. Should the Red Wings trade for Robert Thomas? Comment down below why for yes and for no. Let your voice be heard. Let us know how you're feeling in the comments below. The last thing I want to get to here before we wrap up today, Mark, is Detroit Red Wings have fallen out of an Atlantic Division playoff spot. As you can see here, they're now in the first wild card spot. Their playoff chances are at, and again, this is just based on different models, and it's not, you know, we'll see what happens, but based on schedule strength and how they're playing, 65%. So yes, it is still likely that they make the playoffs, more likely than not, but 65% is not great. You got Buffalo, you got Montreal in the mix. We've been talking about before the break, you can't fall out of that mix. You can't be a wild card team because then you're playing Tampa or Carolina. You cannot put yourself in that situation. And now we're talking about, does this team even make the playoffs? So that's the whole playoff picture there at that point for the Eastern Conference. What do you make of that? They're falling a little bit out of it here. They're not playing well. Todd McLellan called out some players. We can get to that as well. There is a lot going on right now, and fans are not, you know, for the most part, still somewhat confident and like the way the season has gone, but the confidence is slipping, I think, a little bit.
I think with Todd too, he said that a lot of guys were almost like passengers getting cardio out there, but I think this is going to be a big test that this team has the opportunity. I don't want to dive back into trades too much, but the opportunity to go out and solidify this roster. Listen, they've been at the top for quite some time. Yes, they fall back into the wild card spot, but I think it puts a little adversity into this group. We know how tough it's going to be to stay in that playoff hunt when looking at the Eastern Conference. Even this, it feels like 2 games lost, and then you're immediately dropped at the bottom of the standings. But I think with the Red Wings team, I'm not too stressed. Of course, year after year, we always have the worry that they might not make it. But Darius, I think with how good this team is, with them finally getting everyone back and they're making that push, I think they sneak in, maybe even as that last spot where Montreal is right now. But I do kind of push this aside where I think there's no chance they miss the playoffs at this point.
I hope they don't miss the playoffs because of the season that they've had. But based on schedule strength coming up, it's going to be interesting to end the year. And if the playoffs started today, Mark, the Detroit Red Wings would be playing the Tampa Bay Lightning as they are in wild card 1. So I don't mind starting on the road in the playoffs, but I think that you definitely have to get back into a position where you're playing either Montreal or Buffalo in the first round. You do not want to play the Lightning in the first round, or back into a position where you're playing at least Carolina, because I think Tampa is the team to beat in the East right now. That is the playoff picture if it started today. But let us know in the comments how you feel about everything going on with the Detroit Red Wings. And obviously there has been that link to Robert Thomas. So let us know how you feel about that in the comments below. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything Red Wings.